Hello everybody and welcome back to Analog Vernacular. Today we're going to be doing the second part of our Fire Emblem Three Houses character tier list. There is a first episode, and if you haven't watched that, you're going to want to. So go ahead and check the description down below if you haven't seen that yet, and you'll find a link to it. So, this is what we did last time, is we looked at tiers A through C. We haven't done number 38 yet, for a very good reason. We're going to start with that today. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting with 38 through 43, my least favorite characters in the game. After that, we're going to be counting down from 8 to 1 in our S tiers to see what my favorite characters are in the game. Now, I want everybody to keep in mind that this is my opinion, and my opinion alone. So if you disagree with me, perfectly fine. Just know that I'm not trying to invalidate your own opinion. But in fact, I love talking about this stuff, so if you want to chat in the comments, let's go ahead and do that. I'll probably be engaged in the comments as well. If you have questions about my choices and why that I don't explain well enough in the video, go ahead and ask me in the comments, and I'll try and flesh it out a little bit more for you. But yeah, let's make a good conversation out of it, I'd say. So, I held off on doing number 38 until this episode because, well, we need to give this one some time to talk about, and I felt like this was a good way to open it. So number 38 may actually surprise some of you, only in the fact that you may have expected this person to end up lower on the list, if you've been watching my playthroughs, and that number 38 is Edelgard. I've been pretty vocal about my disdain for a lot of the things that happen in Edelgard's story. Now, that isn't to say that I don't think that there are redeeming qualities, because I think that there are. But there are so many issues that I have that she just ends up being this character that feels like lost potential to me. But let's perhaps start with the reason why she ended up in C rank instead of D rank, where I was almost going to put her. The only reason that she managed to bump up into a C rank is because of her characterization in the Blue Lions route. In the Blue Lions route, Edelgard's character, as well as Dimitri's sort of struggle, are presented in a very, very gray space, which tends to be where I like things to be. It doesn't seem to make too many judgment calls for you, and that is something that I value highly. In other words, it seems pretty clear in that route that both ideologies are flawed in some way. And that's frankly the way that it should be. The world is not black and white, and when it's presented as black and white, I'm automatically a lot less interested. So when we look at Crimson Flower, I feel like we're presented with a storyline that is a lot more black and white, or it's trying to present itself as black and white. It doesn't seem to ask any questions or have anybody question what Edelgard is doing. It's just presented as this noble conquest, and it simply is not. It just simply is not. And when it's presented that way, it feels really wrong to me, especially after coming from Blue Lions, where that gray space was so well respected. On top of that, something else that I value is character development. And I feel like the character development of Edie is actually still, once again, the most interesting in Blue Lions. We don't know a lot of what's going on behind the scenes with her in that route, especially if it's the first one you play, right? We don't know a lot about those who slid in the dark. It's almost not even touched upon in that route. The lack of that storyline is something that some people will complain about as being a, detriment to the Blue Lions, but for me, it was an opportunity for them to really focus in on the character development and the interpersonal, interactions between Dimitri and herself, which I think was incredibly effective. The relationship between Dimitri and Edelgard is one of the most interesting ones in the entire game. That whole subplot involving the dagger and involving their childhood friendship and where it ends up in the end is an incredibly interesting arc. And it also gives her a lot of character development, right? We get a lot of backstory from when they were kids and their friendship together, which is a contradiction to where she ends up in the end, where she's willing to do just about anything in order to achieve her goals. She is presented as this immovable object, this rock of determination to achieve her ideals, right? And by the end of that route, she literally turns herself into a beast in order to give herself as much power as possible to try and achieve those goals. It doesn't end up working. It's tragic. It's kind of beautiful in a lot of ways, and it is the best part of Edelgard's story from any of the routes, hands down. In her own route of Crimson Flower, she's given almost nothing. She doesn't change at all. She remains exactly the same throughout. She always has her same ideals. She never changes them. Nobody questions her about them. Nothing. The writing, I feel like, is really, really uneven and sloppy in Crimson Flower, and it could have been the most interesting route. And that's why she ends up feeling so frustrating to me, is because she had so much potential. I saw so much potential for a deep, deep character in the Blue Lions route, which was the first one that I played. And then I found out when I kept playing the other routes that it never reaches those highs ever again. So it was really, really sad and disappointing to see that. Throughout her route, I was constantly asking myself, when are they going to explain to me what her end goal actually is? When she is done conquering, what does her kingdom look like? What does her united Fodlan look like? And basically the conclusion that you have to come to is a meritocracy. And meritocracies are horrible, horrible political systems. Absolutely horrid. Meritocracies don't work and they don't last. It's a system that is rife with corruption, essentially. And it would not take long for any system that is based off of meritocracy to basically devolve almost immediately upon creation. So to my eyes, the Fodlan that she wants to create is not a good one. And the writing kind of just glosses over it, right? We get these end screens where, oh hey, we kind of retroactively just decided that on this end screen, they're going to deal with those who slithered in the dark. Lazy. Unsatisfying. Also, everyone's super happy in her Fodlan. It's like, okay, sure, but the reality of a meritocracy is not that. And I just couldn't buy into it. So I had issue with that. Basically, what it comes down to is the writing felt incredibly lazy on Crimson Flower. It was a shorter route. There was no character development. I didn't agree with the conclusions at the end. I would have liked much more to see one that was gray, very morally gray, that people were questioning her, that the things that she was doing were not written in such a way that we as the players are just supposed to say, yeah, this is the right thing to do. That's really uninteresting to me, especially when it's so clear that this conquest is based off of lies and half-truths on the part of what knowledge Edelgard has. Some people will argue that it's not fair of me to fault Edelgard for knowledge that she doesn't have, but that's just simply not the way the world works. You do not have to forgive somebody for doing something awful because they were ignorant of something. That's just not how we do things. I could go in about 10 different other directions in order to kind of like explain my different points and the way that the interpersonal issues bump up against what I personally feel about Edelgard, especially when it comes down to Rhea and Edie themselves. But I think that, you've kind of gotten a little bit of the point, and I could make a whole video on this. But regardless, the point is that I feel like Edelgard had a lot of potential that the writers squandered. And that's where a lot of my disdain comes from, is just the fact that there are too many contradictions. The fact that she's this immovable rock against the church itself, but is not that same immovable rock when it comes to those who slither in the dark. I feel like her character, the way that it's presented, should have been just as vehemently strong against those who slither, who did awful, awful things to her, the most awful things to her, as she is with the church itself, which she is basing a lot of her knowledge off of incorrect information. Partial truths, yes, there are definitely partial truths, but largely incorrect information, and some of the things that she blames the church for are actually those who slither. And she should have been able to figure that out, frankly. And it's just kind of frustrating for me. So unfortunately, she has to be at the bottom of my C rank, and she does fall into the category of characters that I actively dislike for some reason. I have lots of reasons with her, and the only reason she gets into the C rank is because of the Blue Lions. The stuff that happens with her and Dimitri in the Blue Lions. That ending cutscene was incredibly powerful, and her story arc in that was perfection in my eyes, and that bumped her up to a C. Whereas she would have been, without that route, she would have been the bottom of the list, hands down, bottom of the list. But that story arc is so powerful and so good that she's all the way up at 38 now, so. I welcome your arguments in the comments. I know there will be people who strongly disagree with me, and your points are often valid in some way. It's just a matter of perspective, and my perspective is going to be very different from yours, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. So we can chat about it. Remain civil, please. I will remain civil. I'm not mad when somebody disagrees with me about Edie, because like I can totally see where they're coming from. It's just we have a different point of view. And that's normal. That's normal for people to have different point of views like that. So yeah, let's talk about it in the comments. We don't need to try to convince each other, but we can at least share our opinions. So that'll probably be one of the longer ones, and that's why I wanted to start out this episode with that, because it's a good bookend, right? We start with Edie, and then at the end of the video, we'll go with my number one character. Good way to bookend this video, I feel like. But let's get on to it. Now we're going to be doing 39 through 43. These ones will probably go a little bit quicker, so let's get into it. Number 39, Yuritsa, also known as Emil, the brother to Mercedes. There's actually a lot that's really good about this character, but like I said, the D tier are characters who I dislike for some reason or another. And let's talk about the good first. The Death Knight stuff and the connection to Mercedes is actually very interesting. All of the main story stuff with the Death Knight, I'm actually pretty okay with, and I found pretty interesting. The problem is when we got our free DLC where he became a playable character in Crimson Flower, and it mostly has to do with the supports. I said it in my playthrough as I was doing it, this feels like a really bad fan fiction thirst trap. It felt like Fate's writing, but somehow even more than Fate's writing. I hate Fate's, by the way. Fate's has the worst writing in the entire series, hands down, and it's all weird thirst in his supports. Hey, you know what? There are people out there that love it. It was not for me. I didn't care for it, and I felt like it did nothing but hurt the character of Yuritsa and Emil. So because of that, Yuritsa ends up here at number 39. Ferdinand lands my number 40 spot, and basically he suffers from only one issue really. He is the most boring, blandest character in the entire game. He has nothing going for him. All he is Von Eyre. That's all he is. He's a meme, and that's it. I find him uninteresting. None of his supports interested me. He is just the most boring character in the entire game, in my opinion. And for that reason, he ends up on this list. I'm gonna upset some people with that. I am so sorry. It's just how I feel. I think he's boring and bland as hell. I can't help it. There was nothing interesting about him at all. Tell me your favorite Ferdinand moments in the comments down below, because like I can't think of anything. I can remember almost nothing about any of the supports, and I'm sure that there are some that some people love. The people who love Ferdinand, come out and fight for him, do it. I want to hear why you love him so much, because like I am so ambivalent towards him. I feel nothing. I feel nothing. Poor Cyril at 41. I really don't think this one's his fault. I actually kind of feel bad about this one. I tried in every single route to have Cyril be a part of my team, and I just never managed to do it. Supposedly he's a good unit, and I tried in every single route to get him going, and people kept telling me that Golden Deer, like he has a lot of really good stuff with the Golden Deer, and I got some of those supports and it was kind of interesting, but yeah, I just couldn't make him part of the main team, and I've never had a problem with village characters in the past. I've always been able to make them viable, but for whatever reason, Cyril, I just couldn't get him viable, so he ended up kind of just falling off to the side in every single playthrough, and because of that, I kind of have these negative feelings towards him. Like, I tried, buddy. I tried, but it didn't work. And so I think that it is really my fault that I couldn't connect with this character, but I do know that he also falls in a similar place for a lot of people. He doesn't really rank very high in a lot of people's tier lists. I don't hate Cyril, but I don't like him either. And that's unfortunate because, I don't know. I just feel bad that I could never use him in any of my playthroughs. And so he just ends up here at 41. Number 42, I don't feel bad about. Gilbert, you're a bad dad. You should treat Annie better. She's the sweetest. And you just up and left your family for the church. Whatever, man. All right. Gilbert is just boring. And he sucks. And he should treat his family better. So he ends up really low on the list. Also, he ends up taking Dedu's spot in a point during the game where... Oh, man. Okay. So... yeah, part of the reason why I really don't like Gilbert is because he takes the slot of Dedu post-time skip. And I like Dedu. And Gilbert is not a Dedu replacement, and so that's also a huge reason why he ends up really low on my list, besides the fact that he's also boring and a bad dad. You're a bad dad, Gilbert. Go and hug your daughter, you bastard. And for the moment of truth, who is my least favorite character? Can anybody guess? Can anybody guess? We're going to go with it in 3, 2, 1.
My goodness. The leadership of someone with actual battle experience is, well, I was as good as useless.
That is that.
Useless indeed, Hannemann. Useless indeed. This fucking boomer. This fucking boomer. I don't think it's a surprise to most people who have watched my routes that I hate Hannemann. Every time we hit a certain point in the story, Oil and Water, the paralogue, I voice vehemently my dislike for Hannemann. The way that he treats Manuela in that is just like a testament to everything that I hate about him. And I always get people trying to defend Hannemann in the comments every time I do it. And frankly, no, you are wrong. Hannemann is in the wrong here. And the way I see it, Manuela is only defending herself. And frankly, this is something that I've seen firsthand out in the real world too. Women who are constantly berated by older men like Hannemann, they have to defend themselves somehow, don't they? And so when you're presented with an old boomer like this guy who's like, hey, you should maybe stop talking and be so fucking emotional, I'm like, fuck that guy. Fuck that guy twice over. He will never be a part of my team, ever. Hannemann sucks. Don't at me. Fight me in the comments if you want, but this is one you cannot convince me of. I hate this guy. And there you have it. Those are my least favorite characters. So now we get to shift over to something a little bit more positive, and a part that I'm very, very excited about. So let's jump over to our S ranks. We're going to start with number 8, move down to number 1, and let's see who makes this list. I mean, you've all probably got it down to through process of elimination, but you still don't know quite how it's going to play out in these final 8. So let's get into it. Number 8. It's our spiral-haired fish queen, Flane. I love Flane so much, and it has a lot to do with all the same things that I said about Seteth. The way that we're introduced to the actual truths of Seteth and Flane's past is so interesting to me. The supports with Flane offered a lot of hints and a lot of things that I could pick up on that I knew were odd and that were probably leading to something, and it created this air of mystery that was really interesting to me, almost the opposite of Lysithia's, where Lysithia's, I was like, okay, we have this air of mystery, but I don't like her character because she's so mean to everybody. Like, the mystery itself would have made me more forgiving of Lysithia's character traits. But the mystery in Flane's was really engaging. It drew me in, and she's such an interesting and fun character already, with these weird mannerisms. The way that she talks is very, very, like, almost formal and funny, and just the relationship between her and Seteth, her protective father/brother. Like, we didn't know that it was, like, I fully did not expect Seteth to end up being her father. That was a fun reveal, as well as the reveal that she's this ancient being, which was constantly hinted at to us. And just the way that that mystery unfolded, I loved it. I absolutely loved that. And it really was the first support thing that, like, super, super engaged me. Like, oh my god, these are the types of things that we can learn from supports? Like, there were all sorts of things like that and supports that were really, really engaging to me in this game and really drew me in. So Flayn, I have a really, really strong affinity towards because she's such a sweet character for one, and because that mystery was so fun to unlock. And then she also became my first dancer in the Blue Lions route. So not only was she a part of my party, but she was incredibly useful, and she was interesting in the story. So like, she had everything going for her. So she ends up in this S tier because of all of those things. Like, I love Flayn. She's such an endearing character, and I don't know. I really like it. And number 7, we have Petra. So I always felt kind of bad for Petra. She's basically a ward of the Empire, and it's not necessarily by choice. She is a product of invasions by the Empire into her territories, and I always felt bad for her for that. And just like, I don't know, I always struggled with her relationship to Edie and her support of Edie in the Crimson Flower route, and I was always super psyched when I pulled her into my team in other routes and she got to like go against Edie. I don't know, I felt like there was some karmic retribution in there towards the Empire and the awful things the Empire did. So some of that I'm kind of like creating myself, you know, whatever. It is what it is. But also, Petra is a fun character. I always like that sort of fish out of water archetype. It's always a fun one to go with, and just the fact that she's from this other land with a different culture. It's not her first language, the language that they speak in Fodlan, so like she struggles with the language barriers and stuff. It's always a fun trope to kind of play around with. And obviously, like, top tier waifu material. I did S rank her in one of my routes, and I don't regret it in the slightest. She is a great waifu, and I love her character, so she ended up in the number 7 spot for me. Felix is my number 6, and he gets this spot because he is the embodiment of one of my favorite things about the Blue Lions, and that is the conflict that is broiling underneath all of the Blue Lions in their pasts. We have this tragedy that happens. Felix has lost a brother, Dimitri has lost his family, so many things were lost, and there's all of this tension between a lot of these characters, and it comes to a head really between these old childhood friends of Dimitri and Felix, where Felix now hates Dimitri's guts. Not something I was expecting, not something that I thought was going to happen in a Fire Emblem game, but something that I welcomed greatly. That conflict was incredibly interesting to me, and just the fact that Felix is almost never behind Dimitri fully throughout this game. He doesn't trust him, he calls him the Boar Prince, and, you know, same thing with his father. There's a lot of tension there as well. But I found it fascinating to go through all of those supports with him, because it's such an antithesis to what I've come to expect from a lot of the supports that I've gotten from recent Fire Emblem games. Like, you get Awakening and Fates, and even the supports that you get in Shadows of Valentia. Like, for a large part of them are just like these sort of like lighthearted sort of deals. There's not a lot of darkness in them. And Felix was one of the first supports that I was like, oh god, there's actually going to be a lot more to these supports and things that I wasn't expecting. And so, you know, pair that with the fact that he's also an insanely good Myrmidon unit, and we all know that Myrmidon units are insane in a lot of Fire Emblem games. He is that character. So there's a lot to love about him, including his freaking Aegis shield. Oh my gosh, that shield is ridiculous. And I can't believe that I missed out on it in my first playthrough. That thing is top tier, and is just another thing to add to the list of all the things that are great about Felix's character. I like conflict, I like character development. Felix offered me a lot of that stuff. So even though he's a harsh character like Lysithea, the story implications were incredibly interesting to me. And I guess that's not really fair. Lysithea had a lot of story implications too with those who slither, but I don't know. It hit different, I guess. In a lot of ways, Marianne kind of snuck into this position without me realizing it. I didn't realize how much I was enjoying her character until I really sat down to go through this list and start ranking people. I think that she's just, well, relatable in some ways. As somebody who suffers from depression from time to time, I can relate with that. For me, it's mostly anxiety. I have a lot of anxiety. But depression is also something that pops up constantly in my life. So, I don't know. I find her very relatable. She's very, very sweet, and I just want to protect her. And she has a great design, great character. There are a lot of really, like, sad story implications. It's not outright stated, but it is widely accepted that in routes where she's not recruited, that she actually ends up killing herself because of some of the things that aren't dealt with in her paralogue. Her paralogue with this curse that she sort of deals with, and all of that hangs over her head for her entire life. I don't know. I guess I'm really drawn to flawed characters, and Marianne is definitely a sad, flawed character, and I just want to protect her, and I love her so much, and she deserves the best, and I just want to make her okay. And that's why she ended up in this number 5 spot. I just really am endeared to her. I feel for her, and I think it really comes down to a lot of that empathetic sort of feelings that I have that got her so high on this list. She's a sweetheart, and she must be protected at all costs. All you Leone haters, you gotta give this girl a break. She is at my number 4 spot. She is the only character who made it into every single route playthrough that I did. She is an incredible unit, first off. Always incredibly fast. Like, make her a Pegasus Knight, she's awesome. Make her a Bow Knight, she's gonna be awesome. You can make her anything you want, she'll probably end up a good unit. I used her in every single route, and in every single route, she was awesome. I did end up S-ranking her once. I had to, right? Like, she ended up in all of my routes, and I love her so much. She gets a lot of flack from the community. People don't like her because she always talks about Gerald. It's always about Gerald, right? It's not as bad as y'all make it out to be. It's really not. And she's got a lot more going on for her. She, comes from this small town that helped pay her way into this thing. She feels like she owes it to them. She does a lot of work for them. Like, this is a girl who worked her way to where she's at, and I respect that. She's a strong-willed lady, also something that I really like, and honestly, I don't know, I really like her character. Like, she fought her way into the position that she has now, and she deserves the best. I don't know, I just really, really like her. Her post-time skip design, perfect. Top tier waifu. Top tier. I, like most people, don't care for her design as much pre-time skip, but post-time skip, that design is flawless, man. Yeah. Sometimes, even to me, I don't understand where all of my love for Leone comes from, but I do. I really like her character. She gets my number 4 spot. And now we get to go into our top 3. Who is going to take that top spot? By process of elimination, many of you know who's already in that top 3, but what order are they going to be in? What order indeed? Let's get into it. So, at our number 3 spot, we have Claude himself. So, another Lord finally. So, our other one is all the way at 38, and Claude makes it to number 3. Claude does what Edie does not, and that is he looks for the truth. When he questions things, he looks for the truth, which is something that I value highly. He's very, very intelligent, and he's incredibly likable. So he has a lot of things going for him, and Golden Deer route is definitely up there in the routes, simply because of how Claude approaches things. So even though he has questions and doesn't quite believe everything that the church is presenting, he seeks out the truth, and when he finds it, he comes to the right conclusions. And I really, really value that in him. Somebody who's willing to ask the right questions and do the right thing in any given moment, yeah, you bet I'm going to like that character. So it's essentially what I did. I actually had a faith crisis in my life. I am now atheist, but I grew up in a very, very religious household. And so I had to go through my own faith crisis. And so just seeing Claude sort of like asking the right questions and seeking out the actual truth is something that I can relate to as well. So, Claude, props to you, my man. You did it the right way. And frankly, like, his view and his wish for Fodlan is something that I can get behind way, way more than I can Edie's conquest. So, props to you, dude. And now at number 2,
Out of my way!
we've got my favorite Lord Dimitri. So it's no secret, Blue Lions is my favorite route. I found it the most engaging and intriguing, It may not have covered all of the wider things in the story, but it did focus in on specific characters and created the most engaging and satisfying complete story arc in the entire game. I will hold to that. After finishing all the routes, I still believe that. Maybe part of that is just due to the fact that it was the first house that I played, but I really do believe what I'm saying. I do believe that Blue Lions is the best house, and Dimitri is my favorite lord. He is a deeply flawed character. He is, for large chunks of the game, just completely devoid of like common sense and reason, which would lead a lot of people, I think, to dislike him as a character, but that makes him more intriguing to me. I think that I've demonstrated a lot that I like flawed characters who are able to overcome their flaws and have interesting arcs, and Dimitri gets that in spades. Once again, his relationship and his arc with Edie is easily my favorite in the entire game, and that still holds true here. So the reason that Edie is at rank C is because of you, Dimitri. It's because of you and that story arc and that relationship that you have with Blue Lions. It's just too good. Everything that I love about the Blue Lions, the interpersonal conflicts, the character arcs, the integration with the first half of the story, the way that it lays out the second half of the story post time skip, all of it is just so good, and all of it is intrinsically tied to Dimitri as the Lord. I could probably do an entire video just going through Blue Lions and describing the things that I loved about it, but just know that my love for Blue Lions and my love for Dimitri, they're all intertwined with the entire story arc of Azure Moon. So you can't just take Dimitri alone and say that that's why he gets this number 2 spot. It's all because of everything that culminated in the Azure Moon storyline that he gets the number 2 slot, which leads us straight to my number 1 character that by process of elimination many of you already know, but also still may surprise some of you. He's not a popular character amongst most of the fan base, but amongst me,
This will prove my loyalty!
Dedu is the best character in this freaking game. Okay, they got some reinforcements. What?
Your Highness, apologies for the late arrival.
What?
Dedu, you're alive. How?
I'm losing my mind right now. Are you shitting me?
We can discuss it later. For now, allow me to join your forces.
Look at him! Dedu! Oh my god! I was so hopeful, and I was like convinced it just wasn't gonna happen at this point. I'm so happy. Oh man. You guys have no idea how freaking excited I am. Well, maybe you do. Maybe you have some idea, but oh man. I'm so happy. Oh my gosh. Dedu, look at you. Dedu.
So close. Must press on.
Oh no, he's gonna die. Dedu, wait for me. Don't do it. Don't do it, my man. Look at him. Oh, I love this guy. So freaking badass.
It is time.
No.
Your Majesty,
Dedu.
I will avenge your father. You are the one true king, Dimitri.
Oh my god.
Dedu, I will fight by your side until the bitter end. As long as I am with you, this lance of mine will know nothing of defeat.
Oh, dude. Byleth and Dedu. A year after Byleth was appointed to succeed Rhea as the new Archbishop, she announced her marriage to Dedu, who had resigned his position as the king's vassal. Their wedding ceremony, brightly colored with all of the most beautiful flowers from Dusker, set the tone for their happy life together. Dedu served as an intermediary between Fargus and the church, alongside the archbishop, committed to improve relations with foreign nations as part of the rebuilding effort. In their later years, they retired to Dusker Peninsula, where they spent the remainder of their lives gardening in peace and quiet. This absolute unit, this tank of a man, the amount of epic moments that he was given, great character moments, is unsurpassed. I thought we had lost him in Blue Lions. And I was like, oh, maybe we'll get him back. Maybe we'll get him back. And then it just kept getting further and further into the game. And I was like, you know what? I think Dedu's gone. And that moment when we got him back, I was ecstatic. And that was a turning point for me where I was like, okay, I didn't realize how much I missed this character until he was gone. And then when I got him back, I was like, holy shit, this dude's the bomb. He walks up to people, they hit him, it hits for 0, and he just looks them dead in the eye, and he says, weak. He's the #1 character. He just is. There's no debate to be had. He's the best character in the game, and that's just the way it is. If you'd like to see more content like this, leave me a comment down below. This is the first time that I've done a tier list video like this, so it's not something that I commonly do. Usually I only have time to do LP videos, but if this is something that you enjoyed and you'd like to see more of, send me a comment, give me a like, subscribe to the channel. You can also support me on Patreon as well as subscribing on YouTube itself, so go ahead and check out those tiers if you're interested. Once again, thank you all for being here. I love this game, and I love sharing my opinions and chatting with all of you. So I hope to see you down in the comments, and we'll talk about this some more. Have a good one, everybody.